Hello, this is Haberman, here again with something very different indeed. Today I have with me Dragonmaw, who holds the dubious distinction of having had a hand in the production of Legendary. If you just want to quickly explain to the fine folk out there what your involvement in the game was, and how you can be associated with the game.
So, back in 2007, I was living in Spokane, Washington, or Meade, Washington, technically. And about 5 minutes down the road was a company called Cyan Worlds, who, if you're familiar with adventure games at all, they made Myst and Riven and so on. And I applied to work there, and before that I worked at GameStop, and some of my GameStop friends ended up working there, and I got some good recommendations, and that was my first gig in the industry. Cyan didn't really have a whole lot of projects going on at the time, so what they decided to do was they farmed out their testing group. You may see them on a couple games as Cyan Test. Some games that I tested included Insecticide and Mushroom Men. And
I actually played Insecticide, Jesus.
Yeah, true story. You can beat Insecticide DS in half an hour.
That sounds about right from what I played.
If you know exactly what to do and where to go, and you know this glitch that they left in the game, you can beat it within half an hour, and it's really funny.
Things you learn as a tester.
Well, you know, when you get towards the end of a project, you just get so bored that you have to keep your mind running through any means. But I'll cover that in a minute with Legendary. I ended up, Legendary was the longest project I was put on after Insecticide. I tested it on the 360, not PC. That was some other people. But it was an experience. We were brought on, I'd say, about mid-alpha. A lot of the elements that you see in the game, right, like as
it currently exists,
were already implemented. Things like the cutscenes, those dinky, like, God, I fucking hate how those cutscenes look.
I got some questions about that, some pointed questions later down the line.
Yeah. So most of the stuff was, in terms of like presentation, was finalized, much to our dismay, obviously. But, you know, a lot of other stuff hadn't been. I was on it from, I'd say, November to December of 2007 until about March of 2008. And what happened was, in November, I got a job working at the Joystick blogging network as a columnist. That ended up segueing into a job for PC-specific games, running one of their other sites, and
that afforded you the opportunity
to leave,
jump off,
to get away. And specifically, what happened was I struck a deal with the lead, the big department head, to where I could spend half my time working on the game, because it was in like its mostly final stages. I think the biggest change from when I saw it to when you see it, like, in those videos, virtually everything is the same from when I left the project.
Christ.
Including all of the really hilarious bugs. So they didn't really change much since I left. And we were working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I did 1 week of that, and one of the other testers who was gunning for a lead position started harassing me about me, you know, spending my downtime working on these posts. And it was around the time that E3 happened, and I said, fuck it, I'm out of here. And I quit, and now...
Good a time as any for it.
Exactly. And so over the years, I've bounced between doing freelance journalism. Right now, I work for Gamefront, and doing testing.
How much exposure to the lore or story content did you encounter? Like, were there bigger plans for any of it? I know that the game's original title was Legendary: The Box, and it almost seems to imply that there were future iterations planned for the series. And so if you could shed some light on that, maybe.
I don't have any official sources on that, so all that I can really say is speculation and rumor from around the office, as it were.
Sounds like fact to me.
Exactly. by the time we got it, it was already called Legendary. Gamecock had already given up on turning this into a series, and rightfully so. Spark Unlimited, everybody there should just never make a video game again.
Yep.
But the rumors and speculations were that they were going to go into more depth with the Black Hand and the whole concept of like legendary artifacts and stuff. That's really all of the lore content that we got. Like the game, you don't know this, you will soon, but the game does not have a satisfying ending.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I have gone through it. But yes, for the viewers at home, the ending, ooh, it's
bad.
It does not justify the means.
It's really bad. Like the game is bad enough, but that ending is just atrocious. This kind of leads into probably my favorite story involving this whole project. So
go for it.
I had a friend in high school. His name was Josh, and I got him hired at Cyan along with some other people because a couple people there knew him, and he ended up writing a bug because he'd played Spark's other games. He'd played Turning Point, and what was the Call of Duty they made? Big Red one, I think.
Finest Hours. Or Finest Hour, single. I think it's Finest Hour, singular.
But it was one of the console ones that Infinity Ward and Treyarch didn't touch. So he wrote a bug in the actual bug database, mind you, that never got assigned to a producer. So it was kind of like a little mini hidden bug that said, all you do is write video games about Nazis. Stop writing video games about Nazis and do something else. And he set out this incredibly detailed deconstruction of all of the lore that is presented to the player that points to the Black Hand being Nazis. And it's accurate. Like,
oh my god.
There is no other possible explanation.
All the gears in my mind just started. Oh my... Fuck. God damn it. Fuck.
So the Black Hand officers are all blonde-haired and blue-eyed. Aryan race. The Black Hand was founded in 1947, shortly after the fall of Hitler. They are obsessed with mythical artifacts, something that is very common in occult lore. It's just...
They just couldn't stay away. It's just...
They can't. Which is why Lost Planet 3 is probably just going to be about Nazis on an ice planet.
And the new Ninja Gaiden is going to be Ryu Hayabusa versus...
It's going to be ninja Nazis. It's going to be
Nazi
about...
ninjas, yeah. Just... Instead of throwing shurikens, they throw swastikas. It's...
Exactly. That actually sounds like something that Spark would do.
Maybe Spark should hire me at this point. I got ideas for him.
Well, I mean, it's probably better than the ideas they currently have.
I would not doubt
That's for sure.
This one is from a Flaming Liberal from the Something Awful thread. He'd like to know if they had planned to do anything more with the Animus, or if they were just as lazy as they appeared to be with the current implementation of the Animus in the game. His guess was that they ran out of time and or money to implement what they wanted to do with it originally.
They ignored all tester input and said that they only wanted two Animus abilities, the push and the heal, and that's it.
Great!
It wasn't... I don't know if it was laziness or if it was they were strapped for money. They never told us, but they outright... Like, there was a really long-lived bug in the system that was like, you guys need to put more abilities in this game. You have this neat system where you can fucking make magic bolts shoot out of the character's hands and shit. And all you do is you have a dinky little push and you mobile health packs, basically. Why aren't you doing more with it? And they were like, we're not going to do any more with it. And we fought them every step of the way, and they ignored us every step of the way. So, no, they did not have... After we had got it, they had no plans to extend the Animus at all.
That's fucking crazy!
It's stupid. You would think that with such a cool, like, look at me, I can use fucking magic kind of system, that they would actually bother to design...
To do something.
Exactly.
Anything.
And instead, they ignored all tester advice. By the way, there was about 10 testers on Legendary, which was the most that any project had at that point.
And it's just constant, word, like them saying, like, put more shit in, and then this refusing to cave in for whatever reason. And I imagine that was, like, probably one of the primary complaints. Like, that was, like, something that they really were pushing for.
There were a lot more concerns than just Animus. that is hardly... that is just the longest lived one, but it's hardly the only one.
Fair enough. Were the slideshow bits originally planned as full-motion videos and only became these fucking obnoxious slideshows out of pure laziness or due to tester criticism?
The slideshows were slideshows by the time we got them. And actually, if I recall, it's been, like... Keep in mind that the last time I touched this game was 5 years ago. So I'm not entirely clear on all the specifics, but if I recall correctly, the earliest portion of the project, those cutscenes actually had placeholder art. So they were intended to be that way from the start. And the funny thing is, those cutscenes are actually 3D models put into a cutscene and then painted over. Like put into the slideshow and then painted over. And you can tell, like, that's why Lexington has the same face in every single shot that he's shown in slideshows.
It's because it's painted over the same goddamn thing?
Yeah, and it's basically painted over a T-pose. And the girl, I don't remember her name, Vivian, that's why she has so much more detail than the other characters, is because it's really obvious that they enjoyed painting her over Lexington or Decker.
My guess had always been that all of the slideshow bits were as concept art, like original, like pre-development concept art. They said, we have all this shit, let's just toss it in there instead of having to do like a fucking proper cutscene. That was my assumption, but what you said is way more terrible, because they were one step away from just animating those models and doing an actual cutscene.
To be fair, would you really want them to?
Yes, I would. There are definitely sequences in the game where, like the flight where you're flying out of New York and going to London or whatever, end of episode 3? No, it's the intro to episode 4. There you go.
Yeah, that's right.
I know my shit. I know my own LP. That sequence, I would have loved to have seen just that in a full motion video, like Deckard looking out the window of an airplane and seeing Griffins attacking. That would have maybe been cool. I don't know. They probably would have sucked, mind you. These cutscenes are like, they aren't great, but I mean, it's better than, here's like some fucking like
here's a
single
still,
slide we
yeah,
did.
Here's a still of some Griffins attacking. We have no idea how to convey emotion to our audience.
Jesus. Yeah. John of Ordo 3 asked, why were they so desperate to make you trudge through the underground again and again when they could have done so much more with the levels?
Well, once again, this is mostly speculation because all those levels were pretty much finalized by the time that we got them in terms of like overall design. My reasoning is they had too much trouble keeping the player on path without adding a million fucking invisible walls, so they said, fuck it, let's just put them in a bunch of sewers and tunnels.
That's a great way to artificially just
exactly
close players in, because it's like a fucking sewer. What are you gonna do? You're not gonna like swim beneath the sewage and find your way out. I mean, yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense.
Well, I mean,
that's really scummy, but that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, it's even scummier when they pretend like it's going to be an open environment and you can't fucking go anywhere. Like the start of the very first mission where there's like a million cars in the street and then they're gradually lifted off by griffins to form the path that you need to take. It just feels so fucking stupid. And how you have to wait for certain it's either the start of mission 2 or the start of mission 3. I think it's the start of mission 3, the one where you're standing behind like the police line and then there's like 3 minutes where you do fucking nothing while you wait for the ground to like fall underneath you.
When you see the Golem take out the helicopters.
Yeah, and that's just a good sort of
example of the level design, just the way they...
It's not even just an example, it's like that encapsulates the entire game. That is legendary.
You know what sequence did it for me? When close to the end of the first episode, where you're in the elevator, and you're literally in the elevator for like 30 seconds, going up and you can't do anything, and there's a werewolf clawing at you from outside of the elevator, and it injures you, and you can't avoid taking the damage, then you realize you didn't actually take any damage, and it was just superficial, like, scratch marks on the screen.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And then, like, the elevator stops for a second, you're out of danger, because the elevator just starts right back up again, and it's like, what is going on here? Am I playing the game? Am I playing a game right now?
No.
Is this?
No, you're
what
not.
is this?
That reminds me, you mentioned something in episode 1 that I felt was interesting. You said that the fire axe is the worst weapon in the game.
No, I think it's one of the most overpowered weapons in the game, because you can one-hit those fire drakes with it.
You can... The fire axe is actually the weapon of choice of every single tester on the project. And it might just be because we were really bored and got really good at it and could, like, speed run the whole game on hardest with only the fire axe. But that thing, the fire axe, is your best bet against pretty much everything except a griffin. So,
God.
it's... The very first weapon they hand you in the game is the only weapon you need in the game against any enemy that isn't flying.
We got another question from John of Ordo 3 here. He asks, what made them choose the monsters they chose for the game? What about the group of monsters you fight in this game put them above the rest of mythological creatures?
I think that it's just they were like, well, these are the most identifiable, although the golem and the fire drakes, really, but they just said to themselves, these are the most identifiable, right? You got fairies, I forget what they actually call them.
I never checked. I still don't know.
You got werewolves, you got minotaurs. I don't know if have you reached that point in LP yet?
That's episode 5, coming soon to a theater near you.
Yeah, so there's minotaurs, there's griffins, there's the kraken, which you see part of in episode 2, but he comes back with a vengeance.
Of course he does, because he's so beloved in that episode, and I just love getting grabbed while I'm wading through the water, then getting...
Oh my god, that tentacle just killed a man.
That gets asked. That question specifically gets asked.
Yeah, I know. I know that question got asked. Were the AI always that dumb? Actually, they used to be dumber. They went, oh my god, a tentacle grabbed that guy. And then they would just stand in place and let the fairies kill them. So, I mean, at least they made them move forward a little bit. But yes.
That's progress.
I mean, it's progress of a kind, but yeah, they've always been super fucking dumb. And there's many, many examples of just complete AI incompetence in this game.
The multiplayer, because Legendary does, in fact, have a multiplayer component. I haven't been able to play it, I haven't been able to get onto it in the PC version, but my question for you is, how much thought or like emphasis was put into it? Was it just like a complete afterthought to add it in, or there were grander ambitions for it, or was there any like real effort put into it?
I feel like they wanted the multiplayer to be something, because they gave it to us, I'd say maybe about a month after we started testing, so they kind of did want the multiplayer to be something, but it never did. Like, it is completely dead. You can't find any players anywhere. You're not going to find any players online unless you go out and buy them a copy of Legendary and tell them, play this fucking game with me.
I think there's one game mode. There's only one game mode in the multiplayer. I think it's some...
That's the thing. The game mode is really interesting. So the way the game mode in multiplayer works is you have 2 teams, right? And they have to fight each other and stuff. And they also have a third NPC team, which are all the monsters that you can fight, usually werewolves. And you have to get the animus out of the monsters and put them into your little animus machine. And then enemies also have to do the same, and they can also steal animus from your machine. So it's kind of a unique game mode. I haven't really seen anything quite like it, but the uniqueness of the mode is hampered by the fact that the game design is just absolute fucking garbage.
Here's a question from me, another one from me. Is there a section of the game you actually particularly enjoyed, or that you feel actually manages to stand out from the rest of the game as being better?
So, You should probably spoiler tag this a little bit because
Oh, I can do that for you. Yes.
because this so spoiler if you're watching this episode, you may want to skip ahead a little bit.
Skip ahead to this time code here, and if you don't want to hear spoilers.
Yeah. So there is this sequence in Parliament where you go to the council headquarters and you can fuck around with all the experiments and stuff.
They take away your weapons for a minute and they just let you wander around.
Yeah, and you can like for example, you can put water on the fire drakes, and you can I think you can actually like pick up a shotgun at some point and shoot into one of the cages or something. I forget. But doing those experiments was actually the most fun part of the game. Playing the game is an absolute linear awful slog. So when they said, here, we'll just give you a bunch of stuff to fiddle around with, I was like, thank fucking God that this is over and I can just goof around in this one area. And that also leads to my second favorite story from this project, which is how I got a man removed from at least doing the level design on that particular level.
I also want to hear.
Maybe,
I definitely want to hear.
Maybe fired, I'm not sure. That whole sequence was super broken. Just constantly broken. If you used a switch, it would activate the wrong experiment. If you went through it too fast, the glass wouldn't spawn in the experiment rooms, and you could run into them, and then the glass would spawn, and you'd be trapped inside. Enemies would escape their containment randomly. It was a complete clusterfuck.
Sounds like it.
So I wrote a bug that was basically like, this is a huge clusterfuck, and you guys need to fix it. And sort of a generalized evaluation of all of the problems in this. And a day later, the level designer shot back to me with, you're wrong, there are no problems with this section. So I sort of took this as a personal affront to my honor, because I pride myself on being very thorough in my testing. So I went and I destroyed that section. I spent like the next day just completely dismantling it, finding everything I could wrong and writing down exactly what was wrong and the steps that I did to do it. And this bug ballooned from like 100 words to like 800. Just massive list of all of these steps and what was wrong and what exactly was going wrong, like what switches were doing what and so on. And I got a response on the bug from the level designer that was, you're wrong, none of this is a problem, none of this is in the game, but I fixed it anyway.
Fucking God. The balls.
And if I recall, he actually insulted me. I don't remember the exact insult, but it was basically like, you're a shitty tester. And I brought it up to my department head. I brought it up to my lead first and then my department head, and both of them were like, what the fuck is this? And so the department head ended up talking to one of the supervisors at Spark, and 2 days later, like, somebody else was answering that guy's bugs.
Great!
Which, to a tester, says he was either fired or he was just completely removed from that part of the project. Which, either way, is like, yeah, that's what you get.
And the game is... I was going to say it was better for it, but I don't know. That sequence still might be completely bugged.
A little bit better. Marginally better. Tiny, insignificantly amount better. So...
That's going to be in episode 6, by the way. I have this planned out. I know exactly when the whole section's going to pop up. So... So following up on that last question, is there a section of the game that you feel was particularly brutal to test or play, something that like stands out as being the worst?
So once again, here's a spoiler warning.
Yep. Time code.
Yep. So the ending sequence where you fight towards the Citadel Tower and you have to kill, I think it's like 2 Griffins, and you have to kill a whole bunch of Black Order troops.
That sounds about right.
That sequence is just awful.
Yes.
Just an absolute shit heap. Which you'd think with it being a boss sequence and all, it would be cool and interesting, but no, it's just shitty. Actually, all of the boss sequences in this game are really fucking awful. the way you kill the golem with that EMP device and how you have to run around and find all the parts for it and then plug them in and stuff.
That's barely even a boss battle. I mean, I guess, like, technically.
But the thing is, like, enemies infinitely spawn during that.
Well, yeah, because you need to get that Animus energy.
Exactly.
You know?
So if you're not fast enough, you're just going to get overwhelmed. You're not going to have the ammo and stuff to take care of it. And on hardest, the enemies, if I recall, spawn a little bit quicker, and they're also a little bit tougher. So that whole sequence, just every single sequence that you could be like, this is a boss fight, is just terrible. Just absolutely atrocious. So they're all tied for worst. Like, as annoyed as I am by the whole linear segments, whenever they try to do a cool set piece, it's just like, shoot me in the fucking face.
Can you recall any interesting content that ended up getting cut from the game? Like any levels or weapons that are just missing for the final product that you were able to actually play around with?
No. They left pretty much everything that, when I got hold of the game, in. Some of the changes were mostly to bugs that they had in the game that were really interesting, but weren't really appropriate. Like, there was a bug where you could remove your HUD, for example, which almost all of the testers played with because, like, why not? You know, it's like playing hardcore mode in Call of Duty or whatever. It was.
There you go.
It was. It let us enjoy what a beautiful art style. Some more.
Gotta check those corners. You know, there might be some beauty in those corners that was previously obscured by your heads-up display.
Exactly. And I think I mentioned this in the thread. My favorite bug in the entire project was the bug where they had it so that when you tapped sprint, like you didn't need to hold sprint, it would just sort of activate a burst of speed or whatever. And then, you know, once you run out of energy, so on. But they forgot to specify that it should only work running forward. So when you jumped into the air, you pressed sprint. You would rocket up into the air like somebody shot you out of a cannon. And there's no fall damage in the game. So
there is now, actually.
Well, there wasn't at the time, and most of the fall damage that you come across in the game is scripted.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense then, yeah.
Anyway, so we would play, for example, multiplayer. The only multiplayer map we had was this untextured warehouse thing, and there were grenades everywhere, so we just ran around just popping up like corks out of a wine bottle, throwing grenades at each other, or like just until they fixed the bug, because it took them forever to fix it. We just went around the levels and used that to find out where the invisible wall was broken or whatever, and then logged those bugs to try and incentivize them to fix the jumping beam bug. But I almost wish it was left in the game, or was like a cheat or something, because
I'd be doing that every 2 seconds. The LP would be unwatchable. I'd just be doing that constantly. I mean,
you would be doing it so much because it was just so fun to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna shoot like maybe 5 stories into the air and then fall back down.
What is it with this killing every NPC that you meet? Like, why do they have a shelf life of literally 10 seconds in most cases?
They just want to show off that it's the end of the world and that all NPCs are fair game for being murdered.
I actually discovered something that left 1v1, the NPCs can't hurt the monsters.
Yep.
Their bullets actually do 0 damage.
Yep.
I thought it was like they said like weaker damage that, you know, eventually they're literally useless. Literally every enemy in the game who dies by your gun or doesn't die at all.
Yep. It actually used to be otherwise, but the NPCs were killing enemies, and the designers didn't want that, so they made the NPCs actually do no damage. Specifically, what happens is the NPC does not actually fire bullets from his gun. He plays the firing animation, but it doesn't actually shoot.
My god. Of course. Why would they? Why would they? I'm fucking losing this listening to this, too.
It's something, alright. I'll just say that.
So, here's a question for me. Coming out of the testing process, did you have any faith in the game to actually succeed, critically or otherwise, or did you did everyone pretty much already know what?
Oh, we already all knew that it was a massive piece of shit. This actually, another story from the Abyss. Near the end of the project, or at least before I left, I sort of took my own little personal project where I went around the internet and I found every single review that I could for Turning Point Fall of Liberty, and I collated all of the problems with these, like, the reviewers had with Turning Point Fall of Liberty, and then I built this absolutely massive document about how all of these problems are in Legendary, and the development team learned fucking nothing. And of course it got ignored. But if I had any conceptions that this game could possibly do well, which I didn't, they would have been shattered at that point.
Which brings us to the final question I have here from the thread. Heretic Mind asked, how much did it suck to read the reviews of the game? I think he maybe assume that you had faith in the game to do well, or that you had some vested interest or stake in it. So how much did it suck, quote unquote, to read the reviews of the game?
After I left Cyan, Legendary dropped completely off my radar until I saw this LP. So, like literally, this LP is the first that I have seen of Legendary in half a decade. So, it didn't suck at all, because I never read them.
That's the best answer I could have hoped for. It's the best one. Oh. So my final question for this is, so how do you feel about the new Ninja Gaiden game in Lost Planet? How much faith do you have in those projects?
So when Lost Planet 3 was announced, I mentioned Josh. The day that it was announced, he sent me a link to the announcement and said, it looks like Spark is ruining another franchise. I couldn't fucking handle it.
So this must be like, for you, Spark Unlimited is like your Moby Dick, it's like this fucking monster that's, had some impact on your life that has lessened the quality of your living. For me personally, it's Rebellion, who did, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they did Shell Shock 2, Blood Trails,
oh boy,
Rogue Warrior.
They've done a lot of shitty videos.
Never Dead most recently. These guys suck. These guys are worthless. They've never made a good game. Literally never. How do these guys keep getting contracts? How the hell does Spark Unlimited
how the fuck did Tecmo and Capcom think that it was a good idea to hire a company to make the next iterations in these two relatively decent franchises? Like Lost Planet was pretty good. Lost Planet 2 was pretty good, but in a different way. Like, it's a very much co-op kind of game.
Yep.
How did they think that these guys, whose last real video game was Legendary in 2008, that was critically panned across the board and was published by basically a bunch of 13-year-olds. I really do not like Gamecock. And now they're Devolver Digital, but Devolver Digital has actually been publishing some good games, so I have a teeny smidgen of hope that they're not going to just fuck things up like they did before. But how did they think that it was a good idea to hire these guys to make the next iterations in these franchises? Like,
I don't know, dude. It's crazy. This how many bad developers are allowed to live. And look at what THQ gets to fucking collapse.
Or what is it? The Blue Castle Games, I think it's called. They made Dead Rising 2, which in most respects was a much better game than Dead Rising 1.
Yes.
And most of them got the can, right? And instead of saying, hey guys, you did pretty good on making Dead Rising 2 fun, here's Lost Planet 3 and make it fun, Capcom said, fuck you, Blue Castle, we're gonna bring in Spark Unlimited. They got the high quality talent that we want for
They got the goods.
They got the goods for our franchise.
Oh my god. Well, thank you again for joining me in commiserating over this fucking game that I'm currently playing. I know that me just playing through it once and recording it cannot begin to compare to the literally, I'm gonna assume like hundreds of hours he spent playing this fucking game.
I think I calculated about 800 hours total spent on this game. About 20 weeks of work. And yeah.
Like I haven't played games I love for 800 hours. Like I haven't even amassed like 800 hours in like Call of Duty.
Yeah, I think the only game I have that even comes close to that is like TF2 maybe. So like
yeah.
Ugh. That is the one word that it's the perfect descriptor for this game and its developers. Ugh. Fuck this game.
I'll join you in that sentiment. And once again, just thank you, and hopefully I'll have you back and I'll toss some more questions at you and we'll get some more answers. Because that's what we need. That's what this LP is about. It's a quest for answers.
No, the answers will probably be very, very disappointing.
Just like the game, so there you go.